Hello and welcome to the Mind Renovation Nation show, brought to you by Red Maple, your go-to source for institutional style property management of small multifamily rentals. I'm your host, Nathan Bush, and each show we share with you lessons from my real-life real estate experience. We invite industry innovators, experts, and influencers to explore the challenges and opportunities facing small multifamily real estate investors. We've designed this specific show to help you unlock the secrets to building a seven-figure wholesaling business. Yeah, that's right. My guest today has built a seven-figure wholesaling business. And in today's show, we're going to be talking to a former social worker who turned real estate mogul and transformed the off-market acquisition game. If you want to know more of these types of resources regularly, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel or head over to www.nathanbushmba.com/subscribe, and then we'll get you kept up to date with the show. Check out the other resources in the show descriptions, and if you have questions for my guest today, feel free to type them into the chat, and we will be happy to make sure that you get answers to those questions. So again, subscribe to the show, guys. I can't tell you enough. Subscribe to the show. Go over to YouTube. Do it right now. Make sure that you're subscribed so you can get updated resources just like this in the future. All right. Quick quote from John Maxwell, from best-selling author John Maxwell, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. He has this to say: success is knowing your purpose in life, growing to reach your maximum potential, and sowing seeds that benefit others. And that's what today's guest is going to do. Kind of like the Avengers. If you put together a team of people, you can save hundreds, if not thousands of homeowners from distressed properties and turn those properties into profitable ventures. That's what my guest, Greg Berney, has done. Greg Berney, and there's a missing E on his name. I'm very sorry about that. But Greg Berney is a real estate investor who's located in what he considers one of the best markets in the nation, Greensboro, North Carolina. A social worker by background, Greg was in healthcare administration until a botched fix and flip side project introduced him to the world of off-market real estate acquisitions. He's the owner and operator of Joe Homebuyer Triad Group, and has bought, flipped, and wholesaled hundreds of residential properties in the last 5 years. I won't tell you his entire story. I'll let Greg do that. But his daily mission is to fanatically pursue the full extent of his potential as a leader, husband, and father. And so I'd like to welcome you to the show, Greg. Nice to have you with us.
Nathan, so grateful for the invite, man, and so grateful to get to chat with you.
Yeah, I'm extremely excited. Why don't you I know your background, but why don't you take some time so that the audience can get caught up to speed and kind of tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into the real estate business?
So completely by accident. So as you mentioned, I'm a social worker by background, and was climbing the ranks in a large healthcare system here in Greensboro. And I think the easiest way to say it, Nathan, is the higher I climbed the ladder in the corporate world, the more unstable that it felt. So I was in a position where, just lots of all the stories you hear about the corporate world, right? Lots of red tape. I had multiple different bosses. They had multiple different bosses, unclear strategy. And so, I hit a point at that point in kind of my mid 30s where I thought I'm not loving this. And I started to think a lot about comfort zone and how I've always known our growth happens outside of our comfort zone. And I started to get a little concerned, like I'm in this role that's just a little bit too comfortable. And I knew I would regret it if I stayed there another 10, 15, 20 years. So I started looking to see what else was out there. I have zero real estate background, but knew that everyone around me that had any sort of level of wealth, a lot of it was in real estate. And so just started exploring, like many real estate investors. Somebody turned me on to Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And that was, a game changer for me in terms of just rethinking and mindset and all of that. So ended up connecting with a neighbor who had flipped houses. And he said, "Hey, go find us a house to flip. And that'll be your first foray into real estate." So that's that was the start of it. And that also was the botched flip you referenced that really turned me on to wholesaling.
That's incredible. Yeah. And so many people think that they'll read a book or they'll see something on HGTV or they'll get inspired somehow. And then they have this whole vision that, like, I can do that. I could go do that. And that's a good thing. That's a good set and a good thing that happens in our lives. So we become inspired by something. We think I can do that. And so we take action on it. But we don't have the proper tools and resources in order to be able to actually bring it to fruition. And so we make a bunch of mistakes. Today's show, I'd like to talk with you about a number of different things, Greg, because there's so many people in the audience. Number one, they're going to want to know, how did you find your deals? Like you have a 7-figure wholesaling agency. How do you find your deals? The second thing they're going to want to know about is your systems. They're going to want to know, how did you build a systemic approach to this so that you could scale to the size that you're at? Because just doing one deal at a time, that can be very difficult for a lot of real estate investors to hit 7 figures around without building systems and team. And then lastly, finding the right education, mentor, coaches, that types of things that kind of lead us into this overarching level of success that people can have. So let's start off and let's talk a little bit about the concept of finding deals. I want to bring that to the forefront of everybody's mind, because finding deals in this market can be challenging and tough. What do you do in order to keep this machine going to find deals and transactions in this kind of marketplace?
Sure. So that's a great question, Nathan. I always say, wholesaling businesses really actually have very little to do with real estate. In a way, it is a sales and marketing business. So, we're not, while we certainly do get referrals and we're growing that business, the majority of the sellers we work with, are in distress situations. They're probably going to sell, this one house, maybe not in their lifetime, but certainly over the next span of time. So it's not like we're a roofer where we're going to get repeat business constantly. So you're constantly, feeding that marketing machine. So what we're doing right now is really a layered approach and a mixed approach to marketing. So we've got cold calling, we've got direct mail, we have a variety of different web advertising channels that we're doing, like Facebook, like pay-per-click. I think the interesting thing that I guess I would highlight, even as a mistake early on, when you don't have a business background, a marketing background, very much starting business was like throwing spaghetti at the wall, right? And let's try this, let's see if it works. Very early on, it was just, piece of paper, yellow pad, just writing letters to people that I knew were homeowners. I had no idea about motivation. I had no idea if they wanted to sell or not. It was just like, the coldest of the cold letter. And I think where we've gotten to now is a place where we're really good at measuring what's working and what's not working. One of the things I'd highlight about my time early on, Nathan, is like first of all, I didn't even know what KPI stood for, let alone the ability to manage key performance indicators, which really told me what was working and what wasn't. But I think, I think there's a component of any real estate business that you've got to be playing in the off-market space. It's just, you make money in real estate when you buy. And if I'm buying off the MLS, I'm competing with every other buyer that's looking at the MLS, versus if I'm generating inbound leads, I may not be the only person talking to that seller, but I'm one of a small handful. So I think that's certainly kind of where I'd highlight the starting game, is figuring out how to start generating a lot of off-market.
Yeah. So incredible, Greg. And Blake, I see online, if you have a question for Greg, feel free to put it in the comments. Greg, we're talking about finding right now off-market deals. You gave me a number of different things. You said cold calling, Facebook ads, direct mail. There's a lot of different moving parts, finding distressed properties and writing to sellers. When you first got started, take me back to your first couple of deals. Number one, what did you do after that initial fix and flip botch program? What did you do to find your next wholesaling or your first wholesaling deal? And number two, would you do it again today?
So that first flip that the friend said, go find a flip and I'll take care of the rest of it, in terms of, showing you all the ropes of flipping a house. So I connected with somebody through, a RIA group, Real Estate Investors Association group. Had absolutely no idea what I was doing, but I said, I need help. And shout out to my good friend, Mark Watkins. He's become a great friend, but he reached out and said, hey, I've got a deal, and it might be something you're interested in. He was wholesaling a contract. Now, at the time, I had absolutely no idea what that was or what that meant, Nathan, but we ended up buying this deal. We flipped this house. I think we split, the partner and I, maybe $6,000 in profit on this flip. So we didn't lose money. So maybe I shouldn't call it botched, but we certainly didn't make a whole lot of money. Now, Mark, who we bought the contract from, I think made $15,000, and he had a whole lot less time, effort, and energy in this deal. He was not, rolling up the carpets that were stained in cat urine. He wasn't replacing all the cabinets. He just moved a piece of paper and made a lot of money doing it. And so I just reached out to him and said, can I take you to lunch? I want to understand kind of what exactly it is that you did. And that was the start of it. So I think, a lot of my story, and I think it's similar with a lot of other folks I've spoken with who've had success in this industry or any other. It's taking action. It's getting uncomfortable and saying, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to take the first step. It is incredibly easy to go on YouTube and learn, the steps of wholesaling a property. I think the majority of the folks that watch those YouTube videos never take any action. So I think that's the big takeaway for me. So he just, Mark kind of showed me a few things, just start sending letters to folks, go on a tax delinquent list. Cause if those people haven't paid their taxes, there's a good chance that maybe they have repairs that they can't afford, or there's a good chance, they may have some other life circumstance. So that was the first step, just literally, nights and weekends, after the kids went to bed kind of thing. I set a goal of, I'm going to write 20 letters tonight and get them in the mail tomorrow morning. And in those first few months, it was incredibly difficult, again, because it's not the most scalable way to market to handwrite letters at your dining room table at 11 o'clock at night. But I would absolutely do it again. And I think those first few deals gave me the confidence to know this is something I likely could do, as a career and build a business around.
Yeah, you mentioned tax delinquent list. Where does one go about finding a tax delinquent list?
Great question. So it is different in every single place that you live, but in the majority of places around the country, certainly in North Carolina, it is publicly available on the internet. So where I live, for example, in Guilford County, I can pretty easily within 5 seconds go and pull a list of every single property owner that was delinquent in taxes for, going back probably 10 years, how much they're delinquent. Really what we're looking for, and tax delinquency is obviously one of them. We're looking for signs that a seller may be motivated by a cash offer versus the traditional model of I'm going to fix my house up and sell it through a realtor, right? So something like tax delinquency. There's a big thing in my world of wholesaling called driving for dollars, which is just driving around looking for properties that look distressed, right? So again, none of these are indicators that a person is going to want a cash offer and is going to benefit from that, but it makes it certainly more likely than just picking, random addresses out of the phone book or something.
That's incredible. And so, there's a lot of different ways to go about finding the deals. And we've listed a couple of now, whether that's marketing systems or integrating those marketing systems with tax delinquency. But I'm using the word system a lot because your business, along with property management, is a very systematized business if you're going to scale. And so a significant number of new investors fail to scale their businesses due to a lack of efficient systems and processes that they have in place. And this leads to burnout and stagnation in their operations. Then they end up quitting and going back to their 9-to-5 job because they, quote unquote, didn't make it. But really that didn't make it was you just got burned out from not hiring people
Mhm.
and putting systems in place. What are some of the big mistakes around systems that people make in the wholesaling business?
I don't know if it's necessarily uh, applies only to wholesaling. I think trying as a new entrepreneur to do everything yourself, and that comes from a variety of factors, be it trying to manage budget and keep the operation relatively small. But I think what I've gotten better at over the last few years is understanding, what are my gifts, what are my talents, and what do I love doing, and that's where I need to spend the absolute most amount of time possible within my business. So, I know there's a lot of folks, for instance, that start wholesaling through cold calling. So pulling these lists, let's say of a tax delinquent list, and then just start dialing one at a time, cold calling through. That is a successful marketing channel. It is also the very least efficient. It is going to take the longest, and 99 out of 100 people, even if they don't say yes, that they're going to say no, and a lot of them are going to say no impolitely, right? Because you're bothering them at dinner or at work. I've never wholesaled in my operation because I knew early on I wanted to scale, and the one thing that really isn't scalable in any business is the owner, right? Is my time. There's only so many calls I can make. There's only so many postcards that I can write. So yeah, absolutely. My very first hire was a virtual assistant. And more recently, in the last few months, I've hired a personal assistant. But how we created those job descriptions was really just from me taking stock of how I was spending my time, and was that consistent with the work that I wanted to be doing, and I felt like where my purpose was. And anything that wasn't, that's where I started to sort of offload and build systems.
Yeah. So you start to build systems. Did you build the system first, operate the system, and then hire the person for it? Or did you hire the person first and tailor and rework things until there was a system in place?
I've done both. I highly recommend the latter. I don't know, Nathan, you and I have talked online a couple times about a few books. I don't know if you know the book Who Not How, but it certainly outlines the concept of the power in finding the right finding the right person that's going to help you execute on your vision and your mission. And since they're the ones doing the work, letting them build the system. So, I've gone, again, like many entrepreneurs, from wearing all of the hats, meaning some of the things we were doing had some systems, some of them didn't at all. Where we've, I think, grown the most are in the areas where I've had to really force myself to step back and say, hey, here's how I was doing it. I'm not saying that's the right way to be done. So you are now the person who is owning this area of the business, and I want you to create it the way that makes sense for you, because you are talented. You are far more smart in this area than I am. And so I think if I were to give advice on how to scale, it's absolutely find the person that's the culture fit, that has, the desire to kill it in this particular role, and have them kind of create what that looks like. And then my role is really to just, basic blocking and tackling behind the scene, help remove barriers, help inspire, and constantly cast that vision so this person can make the role into 10 times what I would be able to make it.
Is so true. And I think so many entrepreneurs have a difficulty of letting go of the resource to hire the right resource to 10, 20, and 100x their businesses. It's a real challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs, especially with the way things are in the economy right now, where trying to hire somebody is very difficult for the wages that you can afford to pay and how much margins are on transactions and deals. Like, I can imagine a lot of people are listening to the show right now and they're thinking to themselves, like, that might be great for you, Greg and Nathan. You guys both have reasonably sized businesses. You can afford to hire somebody. But I'm sure you're like I am, Greg, is when you hired that first person, you didn't necessarily have all the resources figured out for a year's worth of their salary on how you're going to pay for this person.
Yeah. So I guess that prompts a couple thoughts. One, advice that a friend gave me once in hiring is that essentially if you are seeking to grow as a leader, then one of the things you need to do is build whatever the next step is, whatever the next team member is, get them in as soon as possible. And if it's not the right fit in 90 days, either because you're not the leader you need to be yet, or it's just the wrong fit, kind of you're going to know within 30 days. And so his advice to me when I said, I started doing math of like, oh gosh, okay, this salary times 12 months. He said, whoa. You're hiring someone for 3 months. Because in 3 months, you're going to see, how could I live without this person for the next 9 months? Or you're going to see, this isn't the right fit. So that was one like really tactical piece of advice I got early on is, you're not hiring for a month. You're not hiring for a year. You're hiring for 3 months. The other thing I would say is, we generally, probably as human beings, are awful at valuing our own time. And so I think, how many times have we done what might be, a hireable activity for $6 or $8 or $10 or $12 an hour. And we spend 2 hours of our own time doing that when really, our highest level of value is in, again, leading culture, leading vision of the business. And that's, Dan Martell has a relatively new book out. And it is all about really understanding kind of the value of your own time. The book's called Buy Back Your Time. Right. And so, understanding the value of each activity that you're doing, it doesn't mean there's not no cost because Greg did it and Greg's the owner and he doesn't have to pay himself a salary right now because we're just starting. Right. There's still a cost to getting that activity done. And that was a mindset shift for me because I was spending all this time, Nathan, like in the first few months, like manipulating Excel sheets with like buyers. First of all, with home sellers. I'm terrible at Excel. And that's something that again, I could hire out with a virtual assistant for a very reasonable cost. So I am, capping what's possible in the business because I'm choosing to take the time to do something that I shouldn't be doing. That's, I think every mistake I've made, every time I've kind of gotten myself in trouble with the business, it's because it's like, oh gosh, I'm spending time on something that I should not be the one doing. Yeah, and it's really hard. It's really hard.
For certain. And I have 1,000 questions around hiring and the process and the whole 9 yards. But you mentioned something and it really leads into a point that I wanted to talk about even more so with you. And that is proper mentorship and guidance often can help us avoid costly mistakes, which then can, these costly mistakes, then they deter us from actually taking action and having the future that we're trying to craft, the dream that we're trying to pursue. What are some of the costly mistakes you made in the wholesale business early on that other people are making right now? So I know that you work within a franchise system. Mm-hmm. And within that franchise, you mentor other people. And there's a number of mistakes that they make early on in business. What are those mistakes that we should just point out and talk about before people even consider getting into the wholesale business?
So one thing I'd say right off the bat, Nathan, is leveraging mentorship. So I was doing this on my own for, I guess, about a year and a half prior to becoming a Joe Homebuyer franchise. Joe Homebuyer was started by a good friend that I met, through another wholesaling kind of mentorship program. But the reality is I had hit a point where it was a profitable business. I had really kind of replaced my salary from the previous world that I was in, but I was having a hard time figuring out how do I get to the next level. And I think what mentorship provides is, a blueprint and kind of some rocket fuel to make it go faster. So, almost every, we'll get a lot of folks like asking about a franchise and they ask every single time, could I do this on my own? And the answer is, I think yes. And, getting in with, and I'm not saying it has to be a franchise model, any sort of mentorship program is just going to help you fast forward success. So I think that's one of the things that I see folks do early on is I'm going to bootstrap it. I'm going to figure it out myself. And I get that. And at the same time, I think, I had to make a decision of, okay, I'm going to just put ego aside. I'm okay with, I couldn't figure out how to scale this as fast as I wanted. And I'm going to go seek help. And that absolutely has made all the difference. I'm thinking about other mistakes early on. I think we've talked about it a little bit already, really valuing, learning to value my time in a way that, I'm doing high level, high value activities. So I was doing, like, the first year I did a bunch of deals. Right now our average assignment when we assign a contract is up over $30,000. In my first 6 months, I was spending the same amount of time on deals that I was assigning for a tenth of that. Right. That really, if I went back and measured it, we're probably losing money. So I think that's another piece of really getting in to understand, where can I provide the most value to a seller? Where can I provide the most value to the marketplace? And therefore the marketplace is really going to increase the value that I get back. I think those are the two mistakes: not seeking mentorship early enough, and then really getting tied down in details or deals that just, at the end of the day, you've created a job for yourself that you're paying yourself an hourly rate that isn't close to where you should be.
That's so good, man. That's so good. If you guys aren't paying attention right now, you're missing the boat, because Greg is not just teaching you about the wholesale business. He is literally teaching you about entrepreneurial issues that most people are making in their business, whether you're a fix and flipper, you're a wholesaler, whether you're a property manager, let's say that you're a long-term buy, hold, and rent person. Look, if you're the guy that buys the house, does the fixing of the house, the renovations, you are the one that is collecting the rent, you're the one that is, turning the property over, you're trying to get the leases, you're doing all the marketing. I'm telling you right now, I have 4 quadrants. That quadrant is called the psychopath. That's the person who's trying to do everything on their own, and they can't. And Greg, you're telling the wholesaler who's just getting started, there is a real value to figuring out how to get people on your team quickly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it happens, I think, for all entrepreneurs before you're ready, right? If you're waiting to feel ready to take that next big step, you're never going to get there. So I acknowledge that. I have a good friend who gave a presentation a couple of years ago, and we said, what's been the biggest key to your success? And he said, well, I feel the fear and I do it anyway. And that's just so simple, such a simple concept. But yeah, I think that's a critical transition you have to make to go from doing, a deal a month to multiple deals a month, because you can't sustain a business unless there's that constant flow of opportunity, and you can't get that constant flow on your own.
Yeah, for sure. A number of years ago, we were talking about mentors and how important mentors are inside of our business and inside of our lives. And a number of years ago, I wanted to start speaking on stages. And so I wanted people to bring me in and have me speak, because I knew that if I was speaking, number one, I could add a tremendous amount of value to the community. I knew that I could help people in a variety of different ways. But I also knew that if I had access to large audiences, depending on the venue and the event, those were ample times for me to sell things like books, management services, a variety of other things, right? So
Sure.
you learn to work those things into your presentation. I learned to do that process by hiring a mentor and a coach that showed me, here's how you do this business. If you want to be in the speaking game, you've got to have certain things, elements in place with your business. In fact, my first hire that I had when I started back in real estate, even doing these YouTube videos over 16 months ago, was my first hire was a virtual assistant to help with the post-production work and the pre-production work on all of these videos. And I couldn't do what I'm doing today with as many live casts. I think I did a analysis of a breakdown of my life over the last year and a half. And I literally have been on a presentation, a live cast presentation, not a one-on-one sales presentation, a one-to-many conversation like this, probably once every 3 days is what the analysis came out to.
Yeah, sure.
And so I didn't get there I didn't get to that point without having a coach or mentor. Tell me a little bit about your coach and mentor and how you got to where you're at.
Sure. So, a couple things a couple thoughts that you prompted. I think it has been critical in my life to understand the value in getting help from people who are where you want to be. Right. So if I want to learn how to play drums, I'm not going to go find somebody who has an opinion about playing drums, but doesn't play drums themselves. I'm going to go find somebody they play drums as well as I'd like to play drums. How do I do that? So I've been very intentional about, there's people in my life that I might ask real estate questions and look for mentorship from them, because they're where I want to be in real estate. Now there's other people that aren't in real estate at all, but they're incredible fathers. And I know I have something I can learn from them about being a great dad. So I think there's just so much critical importance in having those people in your life. When I started wholesaling full time, there was a very popular mentorship program that I was absolutely terrified to pay. I don't even remember what it was. It was probably like $1,000, but it might have been as well $50,000 to me. But called Wholesaling Inc. And at the time, the owner of Wholesaling Inc., Cody Hoffine, who's now one of the Joe Homebuyer owners, somebody who provided an incredible amount of value. He was somebody that, although he ran kind of this national virtual coaching program, made sure everybody had a cell phone number, made sure everybody could get in touch with him at pretty much any time of day. And, that was a blessing to meet Cody for a variety of reasons. But one, he taught me wholesaling. And two, he just became this beacon of what wholesaling could look like. Because, that wholesaling is an industry that can get a bad rap. There's a lot of folks in it that I think are not necessarily serving sellers at the level that we serve sellers. There's a lot of folks that are maybe not handling it as transparently as the process needs to be handled. And so, I just can't speak enough to going out and finding a mentor who can just give you the blueprints, right? And help you avoid the mistakes that you need to avoid. I think another critical piece of mentorship sometimes is allowing you to make the mistakes that you need to make to be able to really solidify a learning. So I can't speak enough about the mentorship I've had.
Yeah. And, if you're making mistakes, sometimes you make mistakes and they weren't your fault. They're natural disasters. Things happen.
Sure.
Things that, you didn't expect. That's why we have to have insurances in place and have the proper insurances. My second sponsor today is Web Insurance. Guys, let Web Insurance be your guide. They can review your current coverages and make sure you have the correct policies in place at the most affordable prices. And what their clients love about them is every year they proactively shop your insurance to ensure you're truly with the most affordable carrier at the most appropriate coverages. So from contractor to real estate investor, if you receive your income via 1099, let Web Insurance be your guide. Go to www.webinsurance.com to get a quote. We are on, guys, with Gregory Berney. He is from social worker to real estate mogul. He took a startup wholesaling organization with the help of a franchise Joe Homebuyer and has become a real estate mogul, has a 7-figure business. We are just very honored to have Joe, Homebuyer franchisee, with us today, who's been extremely successful. Greg, I want to take a second and share with everybody this concept that we've really been honing in and talking about. Investors often fail to grow their business because they lack a strategic approach to, number one, deal acquisition, which we've talked about. They have inefficient operational systems, and they do not lever mentorship or have a supportive community. So this is what we have been talking about on the show so far today. The way we can begin to get past this is by building a strong network. You are incredible at building your network. What did you do to build your network? How did you build your network to where it's at? Whether that's buyers that you can sell to, whether that's finding sellers that will sell you property, just building that mentorship network? What are some ways that you have built your network along the way?
Sure. So I think it comes with a lot of self-awareness about yourself and your business to determine where are the gaps, either in my knowledge, in my ability, or gaps in my business. So, as we, to share an example, as we started consistently generating more leads, I had a friend kind of, looking at my business with me, and we can track pretty easily, like when a seller calls in, are we answering the phone call live? Because we know in our industry, when a seller is experiencing a high level of motivation, they're not usually calling only us. They're usually dialing, the first 10 phone numbers they can find on a Google search, or the last 10 postcards that they've received. So the ability to connect very quickly with those sellers is of the utmost importance. Well, I looked into this. And I said, okay, we're answering the phone. I think it was like 17% of the time. It was absolutely atrocious. Where we are today is, regardless of what time of day, which day that call comes in, our live answer rate is consistently above 90%. On the ones we don't answer, we're calling back within 30 seconds or a minute. That has nothing to do with me having gotten better, and everything to do with looking at my business and saying, okay, this is a gap. I'm not consistently able to answer the phone. So that next hire was lead manager, whose exclusive role is to make sure those calls get answered immediately or returned immediately. So I've really just grown through identifying where are the gaps in our processes? Where are the friction points, the frustration points for either sellers or buyers that we're working with? And really growing from there. And then just, going out and finding good fits for all of those, ancillary relationships that we need in our business that aren't necessarily formally part of our team, but very much a part of our team. Things like, insurance providers, closing attorneys, realtors. So a lot of networking early on. And I will tell you, I don't know where this thought came from, but I'm so glad that it's embedded in me, is the idea of, like, if I'm going to be running a business, I want it to be a business that I love. So really what I look for in networking and relationships are people that I'm just going to enjoy interacting with. So I've got some incredible realtors that I work with, and I've learned not only are they incredible realtors, that's not why I choose to work with them. I choose to work with them because they're easy to work with, right? We share similar values. We share the same desire to help each other grow our respective businesses. So that's been the networking key for me, is just finding the gaps that I have, but then really more importantly, is this going to be a good relational cultural fit?
Yeah. And I mean, you're touching on something right now that's important within business, that we talked about the challenges that people have, but I want to dive into some systems that are within your business. So you said that you had a 90% answer rate. Is there a specific phone system that you're using? And then what are some other systems that you have that are good tools that people should have if they're going to get in the wholesaling business?
Absolutely. Yeah. So a phone system is critical in a wholesaling business, and there's a number of good ones out there. We use something called CallRail. And the reason, quite honestly, that I've gotten the most value out of it is, we have a separate tracking phone number for every single type of marketing that we do, even down to if we're sending a letter and we decide to change it from, blue ink to black ink. Well, we're going to have a different tracking phone number for that, because that's really the way we're going to know this person that we marketed to that has expressed interest and has become an opportunity for us. Where did that come from? So we can do more of that. So that's, again, a system that is light years ahead of, let me just throw out some marketing and see who calls back. And now I'll try some different marketing and see who calls back, to really getting to a point where we know what marketing is being the most effective. Another critical system, obviously, is a CRM, a customer relationship management tool. So I can know, not only when's the last time I spoke with Nathan about potentially buying his house, but, when do I need to follow up next? What are the challenges that he has that I may be able to serve him, may be able to help with? Having all of that in a particular place, again, is something you grow to. And we use Salesforce as our CRM, which is, one of the ones that has all the bells and whistles. When I first started, I had a $10 a month CRM that was barely smarter than an Excel sheet. So, I think the systems will grow as you grow. And really, you don't need all the bells and whistles at the start, but you need things, again, to be able to scale. If I'm only dealing with 4 sellers, I can probably remember all the details in my head. If we're getting 40 leads a week, 50 leads a week, which is where we're at right now, it's never going to happen inside my head, right? So there's got to be systems to do that. The other system I'd mentioned, Nathan, we've gotten better at checklisting everything that we do. So we really try to identify, okay, if this is something I've had to do more than 2 times, we better start building a checklist on exactly how to do it. So that's a lot of training that I do for my team is if it's an existing process that I was previously responsible for, I'll just create a video of me doing it. Here's how we compile the list. Here's how we order the postcards to send. Here's the dates and the integrals that we want to send. And then we just build the checklist that way so that, again, we can be efficient. We don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time we do something.
Yeah, it's incredible. I'm going to take a second and thank our third sponsor now for the show, BBC Global Services. This is outsourcing that helps people like you focus on your superpower. Simple and on your term with no term limits. Get a free consultation. Go to www.bbcglobalservices.com. If you need a virtual assistant, guys, this is the same virtual assistant organization that we use at Red Maples. I highly encourage you to take a look with this organization. What I love about them and the reason that they are very important to us is that the virtual assistant isn't not necessarily just process driven. They're team member driven. They use something called an augmented leadership method, which allows you, the business owner, to craft the system, the tool, the resource, however you want it to, and to manage the employee or the team member that you're adding through BBC Global Services. So go to www.bbcglobalservices.com and schedule a free consultation with no obligation. Again, we are speaking with Greg Berney. He has gone from social worker to real estate mogul. He is a Joe Homebuyer franchisee, which we are very, very lucky to have his time sharing with our audience all of the mistakes, tools, systems, resources, books. I mean, gosh, this guy's given so much value to you guys today. If you don't get something out of today's show, you weren't paying attention. And Greg, we have been talking about systems. We talked a little bit about networking. Let's talk about the whole process of refining your business, because the way you start, you had brought up that you started with $110 a month CRM. Now you're using Salesforce. I'm sure you've refined the Salesforce system. I'm sure you didn't pull Salesforce off the shelf and you're using the exact same software today. You probably had to develop certain fields and things within that software. You've refined your business. Not only have you refined your business through the systems and tools that I want to talk about, but you've also refined your business in your own leadership style and your own skills that you have gone through. So let's talk a little bit about what that refinement looked like from day one to where you are today in systems. And then let's talk about the educational and tools and stuff like that. So systems, what have you had to refine? CRM was one of them. What else have you refined in your business?
CRM, our process for how we handle the disposition of properties. So if we've got a contract that we're going to end up selling to another investor, how do we communicate about that contract to that buyer? How do we get information? Is it just an email? Are we using a mass emailing service? Are we texting out? So every process in my business has been refined over and over again. There's 3 words I would share with your audience, Nathan: implement, analyze, adjust. I mean, I think that is the constant process for any entrepreneur that start somewhere, right? Implement something, take the appropriate amount of time to analyze what is working about this, what isn't working about this, and then adjust as needed. And, I used to think if I do that enough times, someday I'm going to get there, right? I'm going to have the absolute perfect setup and the perfect system. And the reality is, and it probably frustrates my team to no end, but we are constantly making adjustments because we're constantly just trying to get better every day. We say a lot on our team, 1% better every day. And so, yeah, it has happened again with checklists. It has happened with how we run our team meetings, how we run our one-on-one meetings. It's always being present to what is working right now, what used to work that isn't working as well as it has, and let's just start iterating. I think that's the never-ending game that I find really fun about entrepreneurship, about my personal life, about the relationships that I have with family members, with friends, is how are we constantly analyzing, adjusting to get better?
Yeah. Analyzing and adjusting to get better is something we have to do personally too. So, you start off, you analyze, you implement, you make the adjustment, and then that works well with systems, but it also works well internally with the person that we are. I mean, one of the important things is I know that we'll never be bigger on the outside. Our business will never be bigger out here than we are in here, inside of our hearts, inside of our minds. And so I think it requires constant refinement of who we are as people so we can be better entrepreneurs and show up in the marketplace. What are some refinements that you've gone through personally that have significantly helped you from when you started to where you are today?
Sure. So there's, two practices that I implemented a few years ago that really have been, they're very simple and they've been a game changer for me. So, every morning early, I'm reading at least 8 pages of some sort of business personal development book, but always related to where do I feel like my gaps are. So like the book Traction was a game changer for me. I read that not because it was on the shelf and I thought I should read it. I read it because I had this moment of understanding, man, I kind of stink at building systems. That's not something I'm great at. So how do I go find a resource that's going to help me get better in that area? The other practice is just, gratitude. I think something that I struggled with early on. Starting a business is really hard, and it's really easy to get to the end of the day and be focused on all the things that didn't go right. And so I started again after I read those 8 pages, I just journal, just for a few minutes of like, what's going well, what am I grateful for, and that can really completely shift my mindset around. All right, I'm down in the dumps because this deal fell apart, to, boy, am I grateful that deal fell apart because I found out I didn't negotiate as well as I could have with the seller, or communicate as well as I could have with the seller. Okay, how do I go get better at negotiations? Well, guess what? There's just a few books and YouTube videos I could find about getting better at negotiation. So really, it's been those 2 practices that have just, what I'm passionate about is just how do I fulfill the full extent of my potential? And the only way to do that is just be constantly looking at, where are my gaps? Where did I not handle a situation or a hard conversation as well as I could have? And then how do I go find out how to do it better and take that in? Yeah.
And then do you transition and implement that same level of personal development with your team, or how does that work within your organization?
Yeah. So I'm, I think what my job in my business is to make my team members better. I read something recently that I love, this quote. It said, love your customers more than your products, and love your people more than your customers. And for me, it just put into the appropriate context what a leader's role is. So I'm, at the point in my business where, we're doing deals and I never spoke with the seller. I never spoke with the buyer who ended up buying the contract. I never spoke with the attorney who did the closing for us. So really my role is to, how do I help the people on my team that are doing each of those processes be the very best version of themselves. So, we spend a lot of time in one-on-ones and team meetings, talking about our values, talking about mistakes that we've made, Again, my team probably gets sick of me saying, hey, how did that call with that seller go? And tell me where you think you screwed up. Because that's not as a gotcha moment, because I expect you to screw up. That's where we're going to get better and where we're going to grow. We actually just started yesterday going through a John Maxwell book, kind of a book club that we do weekly on the team, where we just dive in chapter by chapter, 15 laws of growth. So yeah, very focused on, again, 1% better growth every day. And how do we go out and take imperfect action and make mistakes? Because at the end of the day, we learn by making mistakes, right? So that's if we're studying any game film, and to use that phrase in my business, it's where do we think we could have done better, and then how do we learn to get better together?
Yeah, we were talking prior to the show in a previous conversation, and you made a quote, and I jotted that quote down. You said one of the risks of not taking action and not knowing felt a lot more dangerous than losing money or ego or whatever else. People often have difficulty with this whole concept of risk taking. And you said one of the risks is not taking action. It's not risky. It was the risk you put on the action, not taking the action. That's where you saw the risk. In that same conversation, you said not knowing. So the way I understood that is that when somebody doesn't know something, they feel that not knowing is the risk. But you said not knowing it because you didn't take the action was the risk. And so, you guys, this guy's a 7-figure wholesaler. He's got a giant business. He's growing in the real estate business leaps and bounds. And I just love for you to speak, Greg, to the audience and share with them your philosophies on risk and because people are scared to take action. They really are. They get paralyzed by it. They're afraid to make mistakes. They're afraid to take action. They're afraid the tax boogeyman's going to come for them. They're afraid that they're going to do too well in their business or not well enough in their business. They won't take the action. How did you rationalize that when you got started?
Gosh, one of my favorite quotes to speak about risk is ships are safest in the harbor, but that's not what ships were built for. So I think, I think we as humans are built to grow and evolve and serve each other. And, just the reality is that growth happens outside our comfort zones. And I think, I was lucky to be in this position. I think the timing, when I transitioned to real estate, it was absolutely terrifying. And, again, one of the things that really prompted me was this idea of knowing how much I would regret it if I didn't find out if I was able to do it, right? If I didn't take the leap, take the risk to find out, could I do this? And to me, the living with that regret sounded a lot worse than I tried it, I lost some money, it didn't work. I think we really tend to put way too much stock in how awful this thing's going to be if I fail, right? And the reality is it's never as bad as we think it's going to be, right? The fear is always louder than we think it's going to be. And so this is something I'm passionate about, just because I know, every person I talk to about regrets, the regrets are always acts of omission. They're the things we didn't do, right? I wish I would have, done X, Y, Z sooner, right? Because you get to the other side of it and you realize how much growth occurred through whatever tribulations you went through. So, I think the first 2 years of my business, I spent a lot more time thinking, all right, I've got about a month left before I have to go get a real job because this isn't going to work, right? And that was terrifying. But I also knew I would have a definitive answer of I gave this my best, and either it worked or didn't work. Then that would be far preferable to me than, ending up being in my 50s or 60s and saying, boy, that's something I really wish I would have done. I just never want to get to that point.
Do you remember the movie Lord of the Rings? When you were speaking, this brought this back to me. Do you
Yeah.
remember Gollum? He was so beholden to my precious,
Hmm.
and I really feel like so many people in this world, guys in the audience, please understand this isn't you. This is the ones not taking action. This is the people not listening. This is the people that they love money. They get this beholdenness to the money and they want to hold on to every single penny that they have. So they won't invest in the system. They won't invest in the coach. They won't invest in the deal because they're so beholden to the $5,000 they have in their bank account. Look, guys, I don't have a coaching program to sell you today. However, if I did have a coaching program to sell you today and it was $5,000 and you invested in that $5,000, it wouldn't change my life one bit. What changes is when you make the investment in yourself. You stop being so beholden to the money and you start focusing on the outcome that you want to achieve in your life. That's where you get the biggest increases. That's where you get the most impact. And if you guys want something that you can invest in, that you could have a big impact in your life, you could go out right now and get my book. This book will change your life. It is the one book that will significantly help you with your influence, whether you're a wholesaler, you're a fix and flipper, whether you're a real estate investor and you're trying to build your influence in the community. Guys, go get the Caesar Method book. I've told you this 1,000 times. It's $22 on Amazon. Like it's so inexpensive. Go get the book. You buying the book doesn't change my life one bit. It doesn't. Because I'm giving the books away for free whenever I go out and speak. I'm giving the books away for free whenever I talk to friends or family members. Purchasing the book is what changes you. When I give it away for free to somebody, they may or may not read it. But I guarantee you, when you invest the $22 in that book, it doesn't just sit on your desk. You actually flip through it. At bare minimum, you'll read the bold print and it might change your life. So go get the book. It's the Caesar Method. You can find it on Amazon. And Greg, I really do appreciate you taking the time. We're coming up on an hour right now. And share with everybody how they can get a hold of you, what you're doing right now, and some reasons for why you were a part of the show today.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I've really enjoyed the time, Nathan. JoeHomebuyerTriadGroup.com is our my operations website. If you're generally more interested in potentially looking at a franchise model in wholesaling, you can either reach out there or joehomebuyer.com. I'm very active on Instagram at Greg Berney. And, I think we're always looking to network with other potential franchisees who are just a great culture fit and want to be a part of a system that's up to something really special. Also for folks that are investors, pretty much anywhere in the country, we've got representation. So if there's a type of property you're looking for, you've got money you're looking to lend or invest, reaching out through any of those methods, I'd love to connect.
Awesome. Greg, thank you much for being a part of the program today. You were an incredible guest. Guys, show Greg some love online in the comments. If this was beneficial for you, just go ahead and share Joe Homebuyer in the comments today. That will let us know that you had a good time and that this information was valuable for you. So thank you very much, Greg, for being a part of the show today.
Absolute pleasure, Nathan. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys. So we learned a lot of stuff today. We learned a lot about how to find deals, ways that you can market to find deals that the top franchise and Joe Homebuyer franchise earners are doing in Joe Homebuyer right now. I mean, it didn't take a rocket scientist to hear what he said. Direct mail, cold calling, make sure that you're following up with your Facebook leads. Don't let deals fall through the cracks. Systems was the second thing that we talked about. Don't let the deals fall through the cracks. You heard directly from Greg the importance of making sure that you're not missing almost 83%, my math's probably bad today, but 83 or 4% of your calls. Like, you got to be collecting 90% of those leads if you're wholesaling, if you're doing fix and flips, however you're getting your deals in. You don't want to be missing the phone call, which puts you in point to have a team. You got to have people surrounding you, helping you grow, helping you get better. Make sure you read the books that you're constantly getting better. Find your mentors, find your group, find the people to participate in, just like we talk about at Mind Renovation Nation each and every week. And they got a special announcement today, guys. You guys have heard me talk all about the book that I have been writing. I've been talking about this book for a long time on the show. I wrote it once and was going to launch it, and it was bad. It was a terrible book. I'm not going to put out bad quality. So I hired a mentor and coaching program to help me put this book together. And one of the things they suggested was for me to create a wait list for you. And so that's what I did. Go to nathanbushmba.com/waitlist. If you want to get on my wait list for my next book, and you want to be notified about it when it comes out, you want to know some things along the way on the journey that I'm putting this book together, go join the waitlist, nathanbushmba.com/waitlist. And when you join the waitlist, I'm not just going to have you join the waitlist and then send you some emails to market stuff to you. That's not the way this works. You get some additional benefits. Number one, you get my entire slide presentation on building a solid REI portfolio. So you're going to want to do that. The second thing you're going to get is based upon the show today. I actually put together, based upon our Greg's and my previous conversation, the ultimate real estate wholesaling checklist. You're going to want to get that. We went through all the different information in different ways in order to make sure that your business is up to speed and that you can put together a great scaling wholesaling business. So go get the checklist. The other thing that I put together in the bonuses here is you can get my guide that I did with Jamie Frazier. You can quit your day job and flip homes. So go get that guide. How do you get all that? You just join the waitlist, guys. There's so much value just in joining the waitlist to get my book. Go to nathanbushmba.com/waitlist, and that will get you access to all of those bonuses and updates along the way. And lastly, guys, I want to take a second to make sure I thank the main sponsor of the show today, Red Maples. You guys know Red Maples. It's our small multifamily real estate management business, and we can show investors how they can achieve double-digit returns with institutional style property management. You can scan the QR code or go to red-maples.com/assessment. Guys, what we do differently is not just manage property. We are there to hold your hand all along the way to help you understand and figure out your real estate portfolio. That's why we do the assessment. We can look up all of the rental rates on where your property should be across the board and help you better understand what your property should be renting for. We can pull your investment ratios to be able to better help you understand your equity and your debt position and your interest coverage on all those, and your margins after management fees. We put together an entire budget for you on what that would look like as a management organization and give you recommendations on what you should do. Should you refinance? Should you sell off certain assets? What's going to make you cash flow the most so that you can continue to do the things you want to do while we do all of the work? Go to www.red-maples.com/assessment and let us help you. And that, Renovation Nation, brings us to the end of another episode. I'm Nathan Bush, your guide on this journey of real estate business growth. And remember, just like plants need the right air, soil, and care, our minds need the right environment to build a life of purpose, passion, and growth. And don't forget to get your citizenship to Mind Renovation Nation. You do this by doing three things. Number one, subscribe to the show. So go over to YouTube, hit subscribe. Number two, go join the subscription on my website, www.nathanbushmba.com/subscribe. That's the second way. And the third thing that you have to do in order to get your citizenship, that is make sure you share the show. That way, other real estate business owners know that Friday at noon, we go live. All right. And join me next time for more insights, inspiration, and of course, a little bit of that nation building spirit that drives a community united by shared values, purpose, and a commitment to leaving a lasting legacy. Until then, guys, keep building, keep growing, and let's lead more than 25,000 souls to a life of values-based investing. In our journey of Mind Renovation Nation, we often talk about personal growth, ethical leadership, and making impactful choices. Values-based investing is an extension of that philosophy. It's about being a steward, not only of our finances, but of the values and vision for the future. Signing off from the heart of St. Louis, guys, stay blessed, stay inspired, and remember, every day is a chance to renovate your nation.